Today, I will share with you a very emotional and heart-touching story. It is the story of a girl named Emily. Her life began with pain, but through her struggles, she found her strength. Listen carefully, practice your English, and most of all, feel the message in her journey. So, let us begin. Emily's story. Cherry Blossom. Emily's story. Cherry Blossom. My name is Emily. My life began with tears, not joy. When I was born, my mother held me for a short time, but soon after, she disappeared from my world. I do not remember her smile. I do not remember her voice. People told me she left when I was only a baby. She walked away from the small house where we lived and never came back. My father was a quiet man. He worked very hard in the fields. He had strong hands, but his heart was weak. He carried too much pain. After my mother left, he changed. He never sang. He never laughed. And although he gave me food and a place to sleep, he gave me little love. I grew up with silence. I remember sitting outside on the wooden steps of our home, waiting for him to return from work. I would run to him with open arms. Sometimes he touched my head, but most days he walked past me. His eyes were tired. His shoulders bent. He was living, but not alive. I wanted him to smile at me. I wanted him to say, "Emily, you are my joy." But he never did. At school, I was quiet. Other children laughed, played, and ran together. I sat alone. Teachers would ask me to read, and I did well, but when I looked around, no one clapped. No one said, "Well done." Inside, I carried a small, secret dream. I wished someone would notice me. One winter night, I heard my father talking to a neighbor. I was not supposed to hear, but the walls were thin. His voice was heavy, full of regret. He said, if my wife had stayed, life would be easier. Emily is just a girl. She cannot help me in the fields. I needed a son. Those words cut my heart. I lay awake in bed, staring at the dark ceiling. I whispered to myself, why was I not enough? Why could I not be the child he wanted? From that day, I felt smaller. I began to believe I was a burden, not a blessing. But even in pain, a child hopes. I tried to make him proud. I cleaned the house, I cooked small meals, I studied hard. Sometimes he noticed. He would nod, but the smile I wanted never came. Years passed, and I learned to live with emptiness. When I was 12, I walked through the forest near our home. I loved the tall trees. They were silent, like me, but they stood strong. I would touch their rough bark and whisper my secrets. Dear tree, I would say, why am I not loved? Why does my father see me as weak? I want to be strong like you. The trees listened, even if no one else did. One afternoon, something happened that I will never forget. I returned from school with my books in hand. I saw my father sitting outside. He looked sadder than ever. I asked him, "Father, are you okay?" He shook his head. "Emily, I am tired. Life is heavy. Sometimes I wonder why I keep going." His words scared me. I felt a cold wind inside my heart. I wanted to say, "You keep going because of me, because I need you." But I was afraid. So I stayed silent. That night, I cried into my pillow. I understood something clearly. If my father lost hope, I might lose him too. I had already lost my mother. I could not lose him. So I made a promise to myself. I said, "Emily, you must be strong. Even if no one loves you, you will learn to love yourself. Even if no one holds your hand, you will stand alone." Even if no one says you are enough, you will prove it to the world. That promise became a small flame inside me. It was weak at first, but it did not die. From then on, I studied harder. I read every book I could find. I listened carefully to teachers. Words became my secret friends. When I was sad, I wrote stories. I created worlds where girls like me were not invisible. In my stories, the girl was always brave. She faced storms, but she never broke. Sometimes, when I wrote, I imagined my mother reading my words. I wondered where she was. Did she ever think of me? Did she ever feel guilty? Or did she forget me completely? No one gave me answers. But I kept writing. It gave me comfort. At the age of 15, I had grown taller. My face changed. People in the village began to notice me. Some said, "Emily, you are becoming beautiful." But beauty meant little to me. What I wanted was love, not looks. Still, their words gave me courage. I started to believe that maybe I could create a different life. Maybe I could find a place where I belonged, where my existence mattered. But my father's silence continued. One evening, I cooked a meal for him. It was simple: bread, soup, and tea. I placed it on the table and said, "Father, I made this for you." He looked at me for a long time. I thought, for the first time, he might say thank you. Instead, he sighed and said, "Emily, when will you stop dreaming? Life is hard. Stop trying to change it." His words were heavy stones on my chest. I wanted to shout, "I am not dreaming. I am fighting for hope." But my lips stayed closed. That night, I sat under the stars. I looked at the moon and spoke softly. "Dear moon, you are far away, but you shine. You do not ask for permission to glow. Maybe one day I will shine too." And in that moment, I felt something new inside me. A quiet strength. A belief that I was not useless. My story was not over. It was only beginning. The years kept moving, like the river near our village that never stopped flowing. I grew older, and with every season, I carried both my wounds and my quiet strength. At 16, I was no longer the little girl who sat on the steps waiting for her father's smile. I had learned that waiting for love could make a heart empty. Instead, I decided to give love to myself. I woke up early each morning, read books, and wrote in my notebook. My stories became longer, fuller, and more alive. They carried my dreams, my fears, and my hopes. Writing was no longer just a secret. It was my voice, the voice I never used at home. One day at school, my teacher, Mrs. Clara, noticed my notebook. She asked to read one of my stories. I felt shy, but I gave it to her. The next day, she looked at me with shining eyes. She said, "Emily, you have a gift. These words are powerful. You must keep writing. One day, the world will need your voice." Her words lit a fire inside me. For the first time, someone believed in me. I went home that evening with a small smile. I wanted to share the good news with my father. I said, "Father, my teacher says I write well. She thinks I can do something with my words." Me with tired eyes and shook his head. "Emily, stories will not feed you. Dreams will not put bread on the table. Stop chasing shadows." His voice was sharp, but I refused to let it crush me. I remembered Mrs. Clara's words. I whispered to myself, "I will not stop. My stories are not shadows. They are my light." At 17, I was given a chance. There was a small writing competition in the city. The topic was hope in hard times. Mrs. Clara encouraged me to join. I wrote with all my heart. I wrote about silence, about longing, about strength born from pain. I wrote about my own life, but I gave it another face, another name. I poured my tears into the pages. Weeks later, a letter arrived. I opened it with shaking hands. "Congratulations," it said. "You have won first place." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, I felt seen. For the first time, my voice had reached beyond the walls of my home. I ran to tell my father. I held the letter out to him with joy. "Father, I won. They say my story is the best." He looked at the paper, then at me. His face was unreadable. "Finally," he said, "good. But do not expect the world to change. Words will not save you." I waited for pride, for joy, for love. But it never came. That night, I sat by the river and cried. Yet my tears were not of weakness. They were of strength. I realized something important. I could no longer live for his approval. If I wanted to fly, I had to spread my wings, even if he never clapped. Time passed, and I continued writing. I sent stories to magazines. Sometimes they rejected me, but sometimes they published my work. Every small success was a step forward. When I turned 19, I received an invitation to share my story at a youth gathering in the city. The idea of speaking in front of strangers made me nervous. But I remembered the promise I made as a child to stand strong, even if no one held my hand. On the day of the event, I wore a simple dress. My heart was beating fast. When my name was called, I walked to the stage. I looked at the crowd. For a moment, fear froze me. Then I remembered the little girl who once spoke to trees and the moon. She was still inside me, but now she had found her voice. I began to speak. I told them about pain, about loneliness, about the search for love. I told them how silence shaped me, how words saved me, how hope refused to die inside me. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, people began to clap. The sound grew louder and louder until it filled the whole hall. Tears rolled down my face. For the first time, I felt truly heard. When I returned home, I found my father sitting outside. He had grown older, his hair more gray, his face more lined. He asked me where I had been. I told him about the event. I told him people clapped for my story. He looked at me for a long time. His eyes, usually cold, softened. He whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "Emily, maybe I was wrong. Maybe you're stronger than I ever believed." My heart trembled. It was not a full smile. It was not a long hug. But it was the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. Years passed, and I built my life. I studied, I worked, I wrote. My stories reached more people. Letters came from strangers saying, "Emily, your words gave me courage." Each letter reminded me that my pain had a purpose, that my voice mattered. My father grew weaker with age. One evening, as he lay in bed, he held my hand. His grip was soft, almost fragile. He said, "Emily, I spent many years blind. I thought I needed a son to carry my strength. But it was you, my daughter, who carried more strength than I ever imagined. I am sorry." Tears filled my eyes. I whispered, "Father, I forgive you." He closed his eyes with peace, and though his time in this world ended not long after, he left me with words I had waited for all my life: recognition. Today, when I look back, I see a path full of pain, but also full of lessons. I learned that love is not always given, it must sometimes be found within ourselves. I learned that silence does not mean weakness. It can give birth to a voice louder than thunder. And I learned that even a heart once unwanted can shine like the moon without asking for permission. My name is Emily. This is my story. And to anyone who feels invisible, I say, do not give up. Even if no one claps for you, clap for yourself. Even if no one loves you, love yourself. Even if the world doubts you, prove them wrong with your light. Because one day you will shine, and the world will finally see you. I hope you enjoyed this story. Have you ever experienced? Share your stories with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories and adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.